In today's video, we'll be diving deep into the world of Pokemon's online features. From the early days of limited online functionality to the massive multiplayer experiences of the modern era, we'll explore the entire evolution of online play in Pokemon games. Whether you're a seasoned veteran of the franchise or a newcomer to the Poke world, get ready to learn about the full scope of Pokemon's online features. Most people assume that Generation 4 was the start of Pokemon's online functionality, and while it was certainly the biggest mainstream introduction of online features, Pokemon's foray into wireless communication actually originates on the Game Boy. Exclusively in Japan, a device known as the Mobile Game Boy Adapter was released in 2001. This allowed a user to connect their Game Boy to compatible mobile phones and utilize online services via the Mobile System GB. There wasn't a massive range of games that worked with the service, but shockingly enough, one of them was Pokemon Crystal. If the player connected their cell phone and initialized the Mobile System GB, the Pokemon Center in Goldenrod City would be replaced by the Pokemon Communication Center. This is an upgrade Pokemon Center that has an emphasis on online features, with the biggest ones being the Mobile Stadium, which allowed players to hold trades and 10-minute battles with one another, the Pokemon News Machine, which updated monthly with minigames, quizzes, and events you could redeem, and the Trade Corner, which functioned like an earlier version of the GTS, allowing you to put a Pokemon up for trade by requesting a specific one in return. Some other interesting details about the Mobile System GB is that the mythical GS Ball was actually an event item given exclusively through this service at the time via the PCC's News Machine. This event would then take 18 years to be released outside of Japan in the International Virtual Console releases, where you are freely gifted the ball when you walk out of the Goldenrod Pokemon Center. Another interesting detail about this device is that the Battle Tower was locked unless you had access to the Mobile System GB. This is interesting because in releases outside of Japan, they changed the Battle Tower and let everyone have access immediately. But at the time, if you were a Japanese Pokemon fan, you had to get the mobile game adapter to get into the Battle Tower and truly utilize all of the new features in Pokemon Crystal. After Pokemon Crystal, the franchise would take a little break from trying to do online functionality. During Generation 3, they experimented with the e-reader and wireless adapter, but never did anything beyond just local trading and card swiping. It wouldn't be until Generation 4 when online features in Pokemon went mainstream. With the release of Diamond and Pearl and subsequently Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Platinum, online functionality would be pushed heavily now that each DS had Wi-Fi connectivity built into it. Starting with Generation 4, all players could now battle and trade online with each other seamlessly. In many ways, the Mobile System GB can be seen as a predecessor to this big initiative, and many of Gen 4's online features and modes are pretty comparable to ones first tried back in Pokemon Crystal. You could trade or battle directly with another person as long as you had registered their friend code. There was a feature called the Versus Recorder, which allowed you to record and share your battles. The Global Trade System, or GTS, allowed people all over the world to trade with one another by putting a Pokemon up for offer in exchange for something specific they wanted. And of course, a now modern staple of the series, gifts and events could be distributed completely through the internet. Outside of these core online features, Gen 4 also introduced ways to socially connect with people other than just straight up battling or trading. One of these features was the Sinnoh Underground. You could explore this area with a friend online and visit each other's secret base, dig up treasure together, and even play a simple capture the flag minigame. In addition to this, later Generation 4 games introduced the Wi-Fi Plaza, which was a more community-focused online hub. Players could go into one of 5 differently themed rooms and connect with up to 19 other players. While you couldn't directly battle or trade in these rooms, there were a plethora of minigames and activities you could complete together. By doing these, the player would earn Plaza points, which could then be exchanged for special items with the Plaza Greeter. From this point on, online features would remain relatively consistent across every Pokemon game. Some generations would add new features, others would lose them, but overall the core pillar of being able to battle, trade, and do some version of the GTS would remain intact. Because of this, I'll focus more on the new additions or changes in each generation, rather than going through and listing every minute detail of features we already assume are there. Speaking of which, Generation 5 of Pokemon saw the introduction of a huge new online component, the Pokemon Global Link website. This would be present throughout the rest of the DS and 3DS Pokemon games' lifespan until it was eventually closed in 2020, and in many ways, this would be the main computer portal for your Pokemon online experience. After using your C gear in any Generation 5 game to register and link your cartridge's GameSync ID, you would be granted access to all of Pokémon Global Link's features. This included a lot of different features, which I'll break down quickly. After syncing your game data, various aspects of your in-game achievements and activities would be seen on the website, including your wins, losses, and ratings in online battles, any actual saved recordings of your battles, your current ranking in the global battle leaderboard, any online events you participated in, and any medals and badges you received in Black and White 2. There were numerous surveys and polls you could take part in, usually about inconsequential things like which game did you choose, Pokémon Black or Pokémon White. There was DLC exclusive to the service you could transfer to your Gen 5 games, such as Pokédex or C-Gear skins, and even new songs for the Pokémon musical. These were included among other normal Pokémon items, like evolution stones and berries you could transfer too. And one of the biggest features of Pokémon Global Link, and this was exclusive to only people who had a Generation 5 game linked, is that you could go to the Pokémon Dream World. This was a specific minigame section of the website where you could send a Pokémon from your cartridge into the online Dream World. This was a realm where your Pokémon could interact with others, play minigames to earn points, and discover items. Any Pokémon that were found could be sent back to the cartridge for the player to then encounter and capture at Unova's Entralink. Some of the Pokémon were exclusive to the Entralink and couldn't be found anywhere else in Unova, while others could have unique abilities or moves. Many people like to compare the Dream World feature to the Pokewalker, just without the walking, and honestly I think that's a pretty apt comparison. You can take your Pokemon back at any time, and you'll get some nice bonuses for letting your Pokemon chill in the Dream World in this completely optional feature. There's one more online feature that Generation 5, specifically Black and White 2, introduced, which is the Join Avenue. This is a building that simulates an avenue of shops, each of which provide various items and services such as EV training, an egg nursery, etc. You can manage the stores and recruit visitors to run them, and as more and more visitors arrive, your shops can gain popularity and level up. Where the online functionality comes into this is that whenever you did something that exchanged visitor data with another player, such as using the GTS or trading and battling somebody online, this provided a chance for their Avenue's visitors to appear in your Join Avenue and help boost your shop's levels faster. Let's move on to the next generation of Pokémon Online features, Generation 6. While the Dream World wound up staying as a Gen 5 exclusive feature, the Pokémon Global Link did continue on into the X and Y era. The main thing to talk about when it comes to online features in Gen 6, however, is the PSS, or the Player Search System. This was a new function that took up the touchscreen and allowed players to easily connect with friends and players around the world for battles and trades. It displayed players in three categories: passerbys, who are people nearby or met through random matchmaking; acquaintances, people who you had battled or traded with at least once; and friends, which were registered friends on your 3DS. At just the tap of a button, you could invite a friend to trade or a random passerby to battle, or you could even use an O-Power on them, which was a temporary power-up that could grant increased prize money, capture rate, or other gameplay enhancements. It might not seem like a big deal, but at the time, the amount this streamlined the battling and trading process was astronomical. It felt like a huge step up from the DS era and made online communication much easier and much more enjoyable to use. This, coupled with the Pokémon Global Link and some other core features I didn't mention, like the Friend Safari and Wonder Trade, which allowed you to trade a random Pokémon online for another random one, made the online features of Generation 6 really stand out, and honestly, I still think this is one of the top online experiences in a Pokémon game. Alas, all good things must come to an end though, and with Generation 7 now moving into the picture, the PSS was not meant to be. Online functionality in Sun and Moon can best be described as a slight step backwards. The easy-to-use PSS interface was replaced with the Festival Plaza, a central hub for online interactions. It featured minigames that would allow you to earn festival coins you could exchange for items, facilities that could be leveled up to provide various benefits, much like the Join Avenue from Gen 5, and global missions, which allowed players worldwide to collaborate on basic missions, like catching a certain amount of collective Pokémon and being rewarded with festival coins. While the Festival Plaza definitely has more personality than the PSS's sleek, clean UI, I can't help but feel that it's a bit more cumbersome and clunky to use. You can definitely argue that there's technically more functionality with the Festival Plaza and things to do, akin to the Wi-Fi experiences of the DS-era games, but personally, I'd rather take the simplicity and convenience of the PSS. Something we kind of skipped over that's worth talking about is Pokémon Bank. While technically not a Pokémon game, it was a cloud-based storage service that worked throughout all of the 3DS-era Pokémon games. It costs $5 a year, and with that payment, you got 100 boxes with 3,000 total Pokémon capacity. You could group and filter your Pokémon based on different criteria, and the service made it easy to transfer Pokémon from one 3DS game to another. I would like to apologize to the Festival Plaza. Perhaps I treated it too harshly. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee featured an incredibly simplified online experience. Gone were features like the GTS, Wonder Trade, Ranked Battles, or the Battle Spot. Instead, the game focused on a link code system, in which two players that wanted to battle or trade with one another put in the same 3-digit glyph and were connected. By design, it was meant to be incredibly basic and simplified, much like the rest of Let's Go, but it felt like it was sorely lacking in features. I mean, if you wanted to interact with a random trainer online, there wasn't a dedicated button or place for that. You'd have to put in a random code and hope you matched up with someone else who was looking at the same time. Thankfully, Pokémon Sword and Shield was a return to form for Pokémon's online features. Replacing the Festival Plaza and PSS of old was the Wycom, which was a new interface solely for connecting with other people in battles, trades, including Wonder Trades, and other interactions like visiting people's camps. Online competitions and ranked battles were also back, and in addition to that, there were new 4-player modes called Max Raid Battles and Dynamax Adventures, which allowed players to team up against ferocious Dynamax Pokémon in an attempt to capture them. Unfortunately, these games weren't perfect with their online modes and made a big cut. No more GTS. At the time, this was a significant change for the series, as all Pokemon games since Diamond and Pearl had some form of GTS, and though you could still trade online with people, not having the GTS's structure was sorely missed. We've gone through 8 generations of Pokemon games, and the online features have definitely had their ups and downs over the years. It's no secret that each Pokemon game's online kind of felt like a walled garden, and though Pokemon Bank tried to bridge them, it was clear that a new app would need to be built in order to further accommodate the expanding franchise. Enter Pokémon Home. Launching in 2020 on the Nintendo Switch and mobile devices, this was the successor to Pokémon Bank and included almost all of the features that it did, like storing and managing Pokémon easily, plus a plethora of new ideas and returning functions from past games. First of all, there are 2 subscription models. For free, you can store 30 Pokémon, but if you upgrade to the premium plan for $15 a year, you can store up to 6,000. 2 of the big features from past Pokemon games, the Wonder Trade and GTS, would now be tied to Pokemon Home with their own expanded versions. In addition to that, you can trade directly with friends, register your Pokemon in a national dex that displays all their information like stats, moves, and abilities, evaluate your Pokemon's individual values, and you can receive gifts and special distributions right in the app itself. Pokemon Home is kind of the ultimate incarnation of Pokemon's online features, aside from battling, which, don't get me wrong, is an absolutely huge part of playing Pokemon online. Home includes everything you could ever want as far as trading and events goes, and in fact, from this point on, every subsequent Pokemon game has had compatibility with Home, with the promise that all future games will also be able to connect to it for online Pokemon storage. The next couple games are wildly different, at least when it comes to the ideas they're going for regarding online play. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl match their predecessors almost to a T in online feature parity. You can battle and trade, create a union room with up to 20 people, and the Underground comes back as an area you can explore online with 3 other trainers. The only truly new online component added to BDSP is that you can now compete in online contests. Not the biggest addition, but for those out there that enjoy contests, I think it's a pretty cool thing to add. After Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl comes Legends Arceus, a bold new direction for the Pokemon franchise that tries something a little different by sending the player to an ancient version of Sinnoh where the Pokemon are feral. Much like with Let's Go, the online features are pared down quite a bit. You can only trade online via a link code, and you cannot battle online at all, making this the first Pokemon game since online's introduction to not incorporate that feature in any capacity. The only other notable online functionality is that as you explore Hisui, you'll find satchels full of items that other players drop when they black out. You can collect and return these satchels to their owner for a reward of merit points, which can then be exchanged in Jubilife Village for items. This brings us all the way to the present with Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. I wish I could say these games were the ultimate culmination of online features, but to me they're just kind of fine. Not bad by any means, but not necessarily a standout. The GTS is still gated behind Pokémon Home, but the base game does allow you to battle and trade with random people. Raid battles return from Sword and Shield, this time revolving around powerful Terra Pokémon, and the biggest new addition is probably the Union Circle. This feature allows 4 people to explore Paldea together in real-time co-op. You can see each other, interact, and battle wild Pokémon together at any time. Unfortunately, you can't progress the story in any way, but hey, online co-op in a Pokémon game is a pretty big step forward regardless. And that's the evolution of Pokémon's online functionality. Kind of a more editorial video from me, and maybe not the most exciting subject, but hopefully there was something in this video you found interesting, even if it was just seeing how much online tech and features have changed over the years. Who knows what new innovations and internet ideas Pokemon's going to try in Generation 10, but I, for one, can't wait to see what they end up doing.